I'm David Lowe. I'm a member of progressive Jewish community in Sydney. I live in Darug country. I often work in Darug country as well, thanks to the joys of telecommuting. This is the fourth workshop that we've run, with one more to go, each focusing on two of the different 10 ways to care for biodiversity, which is a framework for communities to listen and learn and reflect and contemplate and act together and to learn from one another. So, the focus of our workshop today are two principles: one, learning from the ecological sciences, and secondly, collaborating and learning from local groups.
Inagay, I'm Mark. I'm in Gumbaynggirr country coming to you from Coffs Harbour. I recognise and acknowledge that these are all unceded Gumbaynggirr lands and that this nation is a place of plenty at the national scale. It effectively is the Great Koala National Park. It's a place in which resources are astonishingly plentiful, from the second southernmost coral reefs on Earth to occasionally snow-clad peaks of the Dorrigo Plateau. The forests surrounding me house maybe 1 in 5 or more of the state's koalas and some of the most ancient and carbon-rich forests and pristine and pure forests on the planet. I'm going to talk initially about forests and their values, how important they are to us, the types of things that we're doing and the types of things that yet need to be done for our forests. I've been lucky that through my career I've come to have incredible experiences with nature. As Dave said, I am the custodian of 3 fairly large private conservation areas, and I manage them for 3 things. I manage them for biodiversity, for the species, the richness of life. I manage them to store carbon, and I manage them for water security. And those 3 themes really are very valuable to look upon forests in terms of what they do for humanity, what we can do for them, and what they represent in their own intrinsic sense. Forests are the richest of terrestrial ecosystems, in particular rainforests such as the Gondwana rainforests of Australia, which are the World Heritage Areas. Up here, I'm in the very middle of that, which extends from Barrington Tops up just to west of Brisbane. These forests are astonishingly diverse. They contain species that are yet to be discovered. They contain incredible repositories of carbon and an incredible capacity to draw carbon out of the atmosphere, to store carbon in the soil and the fabric of life, through all sorts of remarkable processes that we are merely starting to understand and humbly learning about, to do things such as generate rainfall, to store water, to clean water. And of course, water is essential for all life. So the forests of Eastern Australia, and I know that most of us are in Eastern Australia, are along this incredible continental scale corridor along the Great Dividing Range from Gippsland to far north Queensland. And a significant majority of our population derives sustenance from the forests of the Great Dividing Range. To the east, many of our major cities derive drinking water, recreational values, food supply, and clean air from these forests. On the western fall, our main cereal and bread baskets of the Murray-Darling Basin are sustained by those forests in terms of the generation of rainfall and the transference of moisture from the ocean into the dry and increasingly hot and drying out inland. Our forests also have these astonishing human well-being values. To put it really simply, it's very good for us to be in forests, to breathe the air, to touch the soil. The chemicals that are in the forests are literally healing and therapeutic, and the biomedical evidence for that is growing. There's a significant body of published peer-reviewed literature that tells us about many of the chemicals that leave forests, that leave trees, that leave bushes, that enter the air, that enter our lungs, that heal our respiratory system, our circulatory system, our neurofunction, our immune responses. And in particular, between Port Macquarie and Bundaberg is one of the world's richest collections or pharmacopoeias of chemicals that are antimicrobial. And as many of you probably know, because of some fairly silly decisions made by humanity, where we broadly apply antibiotics and do things like a lot of intensive farming and a lot of unnecessary prescription of antibiotics, the world is running out of effective antibiotics through multi-resistant and microbial resistance. The coastal floodplain forests from Port Macquarie to Bundaberg literally have humanity's next whole spectrum of chemicals that can keep us safe from pathogens. Many of them are kind of volatile oils and terpenes, and they're being explored, and they're indeed being bioprospected for the well-being of humanity, sadly by foreign companies seeking to make the billions of dollars off these new and novel chemicals that marketing of them and development of them through the pharmaceutical system will confer the profits. Fervently, I hope that Aboriginal people derive economic benefit from that. And a lot of my work is with Aboriginal communities for the benefit and well-being of country and culture and the well-being and the fabric of life. If we look after all of our forests, we have a safer living space going into an increasingly rapidly changing future where humanity is driving our climate already into places in which humanity has never lived, and our predecessors have never occupied the Earth system with the physical, the chemical, and the ecological conditions that we're in. We are in crises. I acknowledge that with all my being, and it drives so much of my action. We can resolve and address these crises through doing very simple but effective things, but that are very wickedly difficult in the societal situations in which we live. And put simply, we need to protect every fabric of life, every piece of the fabric of life. Where it's broken and degraded, we urgently need to invest in the restoration, the rehabilitation, and the enhancement of areas of our natural capital that are dysfunctional. And we need to urgently rebuild the fabric of life to repopulate parts of the landscape with healthy, functional life, to keep our rivers flowing, to keep the rain falling, to keep our agricultural industry feeding us, to keep our fisheries functional and productive, and just to keep humanity alive and to act as a guardrail against the worst consequences of both the climate and the extinction crises, which we're told time and time again as each week goes by, interacting, compounding, and cascading crises. These solutions really are achievable. We're the wealthiest nation on earth. Our wealth is unimaginable to so many people around the world. We have the know-how, but in so many ways, we lack the political will, the statutory protections, and the societal actions to urgently protect, restore, and expand the fabric of life. Australia is a mega diverse nation. We're the only developed, wealthy, first world nation that has over 1 million species that's regarded as mega diverse. We are globally renowned for that. We have this incredible legacy that we are the custodians of and that we frankly need to do much better by. Sadly, we have the greatest and most shameful mammal extinction of any nation on earth, and our extinction crises are getting worse. So I'm grateful for the chance to be here with you and incredibly thankful for the opportunity to share the times that we are. And I guess just in the last minute or so that I have available, I'd like to celebrate the incredible work that I've done and some of the work with Miriam and the Reverend Dr. Jason John, but work over many years and decades to better understand, recognize, and promote these astonishing natural values, to build pride, respect, and changed actions for the fabric of life, to empower people with knowledge and plans and ideas for how to act for life, and getting in there and doing it individually, collectively, and using all the tools at our disposal. And because we are the wealthiest nation on earth, and because we live this incredible time where we have technology that augments our perspective, that can show us on our phone screens what's going on anywhere in the world, at the global, the hemispherical, the national, the state, the regional, the local, and the home backyard scale. What we can see and do with that gives us ideas. Sorry, my alarm just went off. That's my 10 minutes. What we can do with all of this is build movements for life, simple, common sense actions and collectives to do what we must to protect, restore, and expand, to serve the well-being of all life on earth, to protect and cherish this generation, and to recognize that it is our duty to deliver a safe and livable planet for all generations to come. And in sum, I'd recognize that that is what so many First Nation, in fact, all First Nations cultures did. And may we all nations, all faiths, act together to do what we must to protect, restore, and expand our life support systems, and in so doing, to be safe and healthy. Thank you.
I'm joining you from Gadi lands, the lands of the Gadigal people. I'm here in Redfern, Sydney, with a couple of others in the manse of South Sydney Uniting Church, with Joe and with Andrew. I pay my respects to elders past and present. I want to say thank you as well to Mark for your presentation, Mark, for sharing your knowledge and your passion and commitment with us today. And I want to say thank you to FEN as well for this event and for this opportunity. I volunteer with the Forest Advocacy Ministry, and we also have Helen today on this workshop. She's here. She's also involved with the Forest Advocacy Ministry. We have Jason John too, our chaplain, but I can't see him there just now. I'm going to share a little bit about our work, concentrating especially on one of our projects, the Breaches book. I'll tell you the story of that project, the role that collaboration played, and what we learned in the process. David's already mentioned a bit about the Forest Advocacy Ministry, that it's a ministry of members of the Uniting Church and the Quakers living in New South Wales. We started about 3 years ago. We stand in solidarity with the forests and all who depend on them. And as Mark so eloquently shared, that's all of us. So we stand in solidarity with all of us by working forest protection. Within the Uniting Church and Quaker churches, meetings and networks, there's a long-standing commitment to caring for Earth, to matters of justice and to peacemaking. We seek right relationship with the Earth and the reconciliation and renewal of creation. And quoting from the rights of nature and the rights of future generations, God loves the divine creation and wills the development of its life. Nature has a right to the protection of its ecosystem, species, and populations in their interconnectedness. Our work's especially focused on the New South Wales mid-north coast, in the area where Mark lives, on Gumbaynggirr, Bundjalung and Dunghutti lands, which is where the government has promised, but not yet delivered, a Great Koala National Park to protect prime koala habitat. And in fact, in the meantime, logging has intensified inside the park assessment area. We're looking at today at this workshop at the topic collaborating with and learning from local groups. So it's important for me to say at the outset that since it started, the Forest Advocacy Ministry has been a response to the efforts of local people who are defending the forests where they live, First Nations peoples, citizen scientists, ecologists, forest friends groups, forest neighbours and others. And we recognise their leadership, the load that they carry, and the importance of solidarity and support. So in the Forest Advocacy Ministry, we work on a number of things. We work on connection and protection of high forest in partnership with others. And this includes, but isn't limited to, a rapid end to industrial native forest logging in New South Wales. We offer pastoral care and support to forest defenders, whatever their background, whatever their faith background. And we have a part-time forest chaplain, the Reverend Dr. Jason John, and he's based inside the Great Koala National Park area. That role was made possible by funding from the Jan de Vogt Peace Fund. Jan was a Quaker peace activist, and that's his bequest, and with some funding from the Uniting Church. And we recognise and encourage spiritual connection with Earth. In all that we do, we seek to acknowledge the unceded sovereignty of First Nations peoples, and we call for the care of forests to reflect this sovereignty. A significant part of what we do is on the front lines of forest defence, to show up to those places and to offer support in the ways that we can. There are active camps and vigils in terms of the Great Koala National Park area in Pine Creek, also in Tucker's Knob and in Clouds Creek State Forest at the moment. So that's people trying to hold the line and stop the logging from happening. The next slide, which shows some different activities, how we provide facilitation support and emceeing to support the events of local community groups. On the top left, you can actually see that Jason is participating in a koala funeral at Pine Creek State Forest. So there are a number of occasions where Jason's been asked to have a formal role in rituals that acknowledge the loss of forest environments, the loss of forest creatures, and the grief of local community people. We also run our own events. So this event here was celebrating forests, the blessing of forests, about 6 months ago at Pine Creek State Forest. It included a talk by Urunga Aboriginal Corporation. It included an eco-faith gathering and ritual. It included a guided meditation and mindfulness walk led by a Buddhist in the forest, and it included the launch of our Breaches book. About the Breaches book. It's a resource to support the wider movement in the protection of forests. Forestry Corporation, which is New South Wales government-owned corporation, is a serial criminal offender that has repeatedly broken the rules that are supposed to protect wildlife. And it's not just me saying that, that's the courts saying that. Often the breaches of the regulations have come to light because of the work of local people who monitor and report on forestry operations on the ground. The Breaches book uses photographs, texts, and references to profile the corporation's recent breaches, and it focuses on 8 forests up and down the New South Wales coast, as well as glider surveys and koala monitoring. The book aims to build community awareness of this issue, build political will to stop it, and to support the work of people who are trying to hold the corporation to account. And this is one of the profiles in the book. It's Wild Cattle Creek State Forest. And I particularly show this one because this year, shortly, Forestry Corporation will be sentenced for the crimes of cutting down giant trees and hollow-bearing trees in Wild Cattle Creek. If you want to access this book, you can download an electronic copy from that website that's listed there. And you can also order a hard copy if you would like. There are the instructions for how to do that. So how did this project involve collaboration? There was collaboration from start to finish. The idea for the book first came about from a conversation between forest defenders, our forest chaplain Jason, and others from the Forest Advocacy Ministry on a car trip in the forest one day. The concept for the book was further developed through consultation with forest defenders in various parts of New South Wales. Plus, multiple organisations contributed directly to the book. They provided contacts, breach reports, ecological drafts. They read and commented drafts, as well as other about the importance of forests and care for biodiversity from various religious perspectives. And those quotes are included in the introduction to the book. So thank you very much for those contributions. Many people have been involved in distributing the book and getting the word out about it. Contributors and various individuals and groups have personally given the book to New South Wales parliamentarians and their staffers. The book is being displayed on community group stalls, in community spaces like libraries and cafes, and in workplaces too. It's been promoted at forest-related community events, and it's being used by individuals and groups in informal conversations with others, as well as in advocacy efforts like letters and submissions to the government. So how has collaboration strengthened the project? As I want to say that fundamentally there'd be no Breaches book without the contributions from citizen scientists, ecologists, and forest defenders. I'm lead author on the book, but I wouldn't have been able to write it without them. So, here you can see some pictures from the book of citizen scientists, ecologists, and community members in action. And these particular photos are from the North Coast. Next slide, which is photos of people from the South Coast. Also, these are in the book. It was input from local people during the concept development stage that led to the book focusing not just on Forestry Corporation's breaches, but also on the work of local people to bring the breaches to light. And really that dual focus rather than one was key to everything that followed. The contributions to the book, people using the book, and citizen scientists and forest defenders feeling supported to keep going in their efforts. So people have told us that the book's been a vindication of their work and has helped them to feel encouraged and valued. And of course, we want Forestry Corporation to stop offending. What we learned from this project, there are a range of things that we learned. We learned that collaboration leads to more effective resources. We learned that relationships and trust are built through concrete commitment and collaborative work together. The Breaches book, it was a product of existing relationships. It deepened those relationships and it helped to forge new ones in various parts of the state. And finally, while the Forest Advocacy Ministry may be small, through well-targeted work that draws on our strengths, and I'm a social researcher, that's my bread and butter. I live in Sydney. I don't live on the front lines of forest defence, but this is what I could bring to that struggle, to that commitment and that vocation. By drawing on our strengths, we can contribute to and amplify efforts to protect forests. And the result of all of this is strengthened defence of the forests. So you can find out more about our work, including resources for how you can support forest defenders and get involved yourself by following those links. And I want to finish by saying that how we do things matters, not only the end goal. And the 10 Ways understands the importance of joining hands to care for biodiversity. And I'm really grateful to FEN for the opportunity to share with you today. Thanks so much.
When I was studying ecology at university, I had a rather very extremely cynical lecturer, and we'd say sometimes, what can we do to save the planet, to preserve these different ecologies we're learning about? And he was like, well, ecology as a science will be a science even if there's nothing to preserve, and it kind of took us all aback. But I think the deeper, longer lesson from that is that in any environment, no matter how degraded, where there's humans, where there's greenery, where there's platypus or other animals, other parts of an ecology coming back, there's hope for some form of ecology. And it just reaffirms how important it is to develop these connections through other communities that have more connection to less disturbed forest, or where there's less disturbance to the caretaking and wisdom of the First Nations people still connected with those forests in that way, and those places in so many places. I'm also reminded of work that we can do through other community groups, like whether it's bush care, or one of the little things I do sometimes is the garden club at my youngest child's primary school, where we do a little bit of teaching the kids about different plants, both the little bit of remnant bush and the gardens that they planted at the school. So there's little ways we can all chip away. Thank you all for your time and your chance to connect with one another and learn in those small groups. And of course, special thanks to Mark and Miriam for sharing their experiences so movingly and eloquently. Wishing you peace, hope, and time together, time with loved ones, and time on country in the weeks and for the year ahead.